District 47 initiated a comprehensive review of school district boundaries in early 2024 to ensure balanced enrollment and efficient use of our facilities and resources. The first phase of this work focused on our 3 middle schools, and boundary adjustments for those schools took effect during the 25-26 school year. The focus then shifted to reviewing elementary school boundaries. The Boundary Committee, composed of board members, administrators, staff, parents, guardians, and community representatives, has been analyzing current enrollment data, population trends, including several new housing developments I'm sure you see as you drive around town, geographic considerations, community feedback, and other relevant factors to determine whether adjustments are needed. The Boundary Committee has completed its assessment and provided the recommendations in partnership with myself, the Superintendent of District 47. Beginning in July, I will be providing informational presentations to the Board of Education during board meetings to address questions, share community feedback, and help the board and the community better understand the options and considerations currently being considered. A community-wide survey will be conducted in September to gather additional feedback on the proposed options. A final presentation to the Board of Education will take place at the October board meeting, and then the board will vote on a final decision in November. Any approved changes will go into effect for the 27-28 school year. So again, the purpose of our Boundary Committee has been to maintain a balanced student enrollment when we look across all of our schools across the district, so that we can be utilizing our resources and our facilities in an equitable way for our educational opportunities for our students. We're currently reviewing boundaries at the elementary level to take a look at a cohesive K-12 experience when we look at our partner district, District 155. We want consistency across the different programs that we offer, and we want to improve our transportation efficiency where possible, keeping students at their home schools whenever possible. And again, we'd like to stress that this initiative is focused on our long-term stability for our schools, ultimately to better support our students. So some have asked why a boundary change is even necessary. When we look at our enrollment, we want our enrollment aligned to capacity, meaning appropriate class sizes and stronger learning environments across all of our buildings and not just in some of our buildings. Balanced buildings will allow for consistent, equitable staffing that give all of our students access to qualified support regardless of where they live. And then these changes are preparing the school district for long-term stability to be able to better accommodate all the new developments that you see going on as you drive through town. So we always try to look at what is the connection to the strategic plan that we're working on. And goal 4 is about our facilities and our finances. And the bullet points out of that part of our strategic plan is that we want to ensure our facilities are equitable across the district. We want to prioritize funding for the purpose of student growth. And we want to remain fiscally responsible and good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. So there have been recent feedback opportunities. And the survey that was done here in the spring as school got out, as you can see on this slide, we got responses from every school in the district, as well as a couple from our administration building and our bus drivers. From that feedback, there were some top themes. One was social emotional impact. People just want to make sure that we're looking at how any changes could impact students and that we're supporting that as we go through. Proximity and transportation came through as another strong theme. That was also a theme we heard when we did the middle school changes. People want to make sure that we have a sense of community and neighborhoods and that we make changes that make sense and don't necessarily impact neighborhoods more than we need to. And then equity and class size, making sure that when we look at class sizes and resources across our district, it is as equitable as possible, prioritizing that for all students. Continuing on with some of the top themes was special programs and inclusivity. Our dual language program, as well as several of our special ed programs, need to be accessible across the district. And what some of that means is our programs now are where we have the space, and that might mean longer bus rides or wait times based on where you live currently. And then communication and timeline. People wanted a call for transparency, and they wanted timely updates on what we're doing to allow people time to digest the information and plan accordingly. So as we look at our timeline moving forward, here in July, I will be presenting the boundary adjustment recommendations to the Board of Education at the July board meeting. In August, we'll have continued communication with our staff, our families, and community members with ongoing opportunities to share information and feedback. September, There will be another community-wide survey with the purpose of gathering feedback on the options that are being presented and priorities for the Board of Education to take in and consider. In October, there will be a final comprehensive presentation shared with the Board of Education, including that community feedback and any discussion that we've received. And then in November, the plan would be to have the Board of Education make a decision on one of the two options that are here. So boundary adjustments approved by the board in November will not be the end of the journey. Once a decision is made by the Board of Education in November, we would then start shifting our focus to how do we support the students that are going to be impacted. We want to change mailing lists for schools so that if you're changing schools, that new school can start inviting you to things at the end of the school year, get you involved in things, getting ready for the next school year, so that you feel that seamless transition and change and welcome into a new school that you would be part of. Goals and priorities of our boundary review. So as we looked at different things or how we could shift boundaries, what were those goals? We wanted to look for contiguous boundaries, looking for natural divisions between neighborhoods for attendance lines. We want to look at prioritizing the smallest amount of time on buses as possible, minimizing transportation costs, but also minimizing the amount of time kids are on buses every day to and from school. That's where pre-K and some of our special ed programs we're looking to have more centralized or numerous locations to go. And then balancing class size throughout our district, because a class sizes vary greatly based on where you are in town. Then we want to take a look at longevity. While we do believe we need to be looking at boundaries on a routine schedule, that doesn't mean we should always be shifting them. We'd like to have something that's more of a long-term look with all the potential housing developments in town. We want to take a look, even though we do have a high school district along with our elementary district, we want to give our parents and our families that K-12 experience as much as possible. And as we look at boundaries, how can we do that? How can we create that experience for people? And then again, pre-K is an area where we'd like to have a centrally located program as well as where it's currently located at Glacier on the south side of town to minimize transportation time for students. So the question would be, what if we do nothing? What is the impact if we choose to do nothing with our current boundaries? We like to look at this through two different lenses. One lens would be through the family or the student lens or impact. If we do nothing, many students will continue to have long bus rides, including new ones that are created to accommodate students in the new developments where they can't go to their local neighborhood school because it's closed due to capacity, and then they'll have to ride a bus to another school. With no new pre-K location more centrally located, it means that, again, some of our students on the north end of town would have almost an hour drive to school and an hour drive home, meaning that they're on a bus about as much as they are in the classroom. And then we would continue to have overcrowding in some schools and great variation in our class size from building to building at the elementary level. From the district lens, we would continue to have increased transportation costs in the district from the longer routes, meaning we need drivers for a longer period of time, increased fuel cost, and more wear and tear on our buses and our equipment. It's also we are not using our facilities and our human resources or our staffing as efficiently as we could, and those inefficiencies would have to continue if we do nothing about our boundaries. So recommendation number 1 would be to look at grade level centers. So the first question is, what are grade level centers? We would look to pair elementary buildings together and have each elementary building house specific grade levels rather than the traditional K-5 elementary that our community is used to. Grade level centers facilitate targeted, developmentally appropriate instruction, social emotional support, and teacher collaboration for those specific grade levels. Combining grades from both schools would help us balance class sizes between a larger boundary area, reducing the number of classrooms that are either over or under capacity, balancing it out. So what would the pairings look like? We have 9 elementary schools, so we would pair 4 pairings together, leaving Indian Prairie as a K-5 building. We would pair together Glacier Ridge and Woods Creek, Coventry and Canterbury, North and Hussman, West and South. Here is a map of our current boundaries. And to take a look at these, for example, North and Hussman are on the north side of town. North is the light blue, Hussman is the purple. So it would be those two boundaries together. And then for certain grade levels, people would go to Hussman, and other grade levels, people would go to North. So the boundaries themselves wouldn't change. It's just where you would go to school for a certain grade level would change. How does a grade level center align to our priorities? Well, it would keep our neighborhoods intact while addressing future capacity, some transportation, and allow us to balance our enrollment. Nearby buildings allow for transportation routes and siblings to ride the buses together with largely unchanged schedules. It opens up space at North to have a more centrally located a couple of pre-K classrooms, which helps us address pre-K and the transportation and drive time for our youngest learners. It removes non-contiguous boundaries of South and Coventry, and it creates a pathway for our Ridgefield subdivision on the northwest side of town from K all the way through 12, staying together in schools. It balances class sizes and flexible student groupings. What's meant by that is right now, if we have students, and I'm sure if you have multiple children in your household, sometimes kids don't always get along and we need to separate them for short periods of time. And when we have to do some flexible grouping, if we only have 2 or 3 sections, sometimes it's very hard to separate students. But if we combined into grade level centers and you have 4 or 5 classrooms at a grade level, it's more easily done to do some separation that might be beneficial for everyone. It creates developmentally appropriate elementary environments, routines, and spaces. By having fewer grade levels in a building, we're able to really focus in on the age development and span of that grade level instead of spanning from 5 years old up to 11 or 12. It gives teachers more targeted professional development opportunities and stronger grade level collaboration because you have more teachers at a grade level. And so you have a larger team to support and then do professional development with. And then it reduces some duplication of our curriculum materials or library resources or specialized software by having grade levels in specific buildings. So looking at all of that, there are some really key benefits out of those that I'd like to focus on. One is being able to balance class size by redistributing our enrollment. The other is being able to have pre-K also at North, which allows us to have 2 different locations, reducing some transportation. It would keep neighborhoods together, but putting 2 boundaries together across 2 schools. Having larger teacher teams leads to more support for our teachers, increasing climate and culture at those grade levels. And then it allows us to really target professional development and instruction for students and staff more focused on those particular grade levels. A change like this does not come without challenges. And so what are the challenges of grade level centers? Well, it would give us several grade level configurations that would be inconsistent across the district. We'd have a K-5 building. We would then have some buildings that are grade level centers that are K-2 and the other building is 3-5. We would have others that are K-3 and a 4-5. So we wouldn't have a consistent expectation of what grade levels are at which buildings, which is a challenge. Some building modifications like bathrooms or playground areas would be necessary to accommodate our primary or our K-2 learners and an intermediate for others, which are 3-5. If we did those kinds of adjustments, if something were to happen or if the population in the community would change, then that would be something we would have to consider if we had to change a building back to a K-5. Grade level centers does not necessarily move enough students south in our boundaries, which keeps most of our special ed programming concentrated in those buildings on the south side of town. And then the other thing that we would need to work with our staff over is school start and stop times of those paired schools would need to be slightly shifted and staggered, which would allow a bus to go into a neighborhood, pick up siblings, drop at one building, go to the other building, drop at the other building, and then the same thing for dismissal. It would also help parents who want to drop off and pick up their children to have staggered start and stop times. That would be something we need to work through with our staff. Recommendation number 2 is the development of a language academy. What is a language academy? Instead of offering dual language at 3 different elementary schools right now, a language academy would bring all of our dual language students into one building. Students would split their instructional time as they currently do between the 2 languages of English and Spanish. Coventry would be the building that we're looking to transition to a language academy if this were the recommendation that moved forward. And so all of our dual language students would be educated in one single location. That means our boundary lines would be redrawn from having 9 elementary boundaries to 8. With Coventry being a language academy without its own boundaries as a school. This does not mean that our ELL learners would come to Coventry. Our ELL learners would still receive services in their home elementary school. This slide could be a little confusing, so I want to explain it. On the right-hand side, with the colors, you see what the current boundaries of the 9 elementary buildings we have are. And then you see some red lines. On the left are just the red lines. And that right now is the proposed 8 new boundaries. So the new boundaries are on the left with only 8 elementary schools. On the right, you have the current color boundaries of our 9 with the 8 proposed overlaying on them. This is just for visual. Our hope and our anticipation is that we're currently working with Google on some interactive maps so that we would have these online and you'd be able to put in your address or zoom in and look a little bit more. But we wanted you to have just a visual of what we're looking at right now. So how does a language academy align with our priorities? Well, it removes non-contiguous boundaries. It continues to provide that K-12 pathway for our Ridgefield subdivision. It supports balanced class sizes and allows, again, that flexibility of separating K-5 students. And this does it not only for our monolingual students, but it also allows it for our dual language students. It provides more targeted professional development and growth for dual language staff and programs as well, because it puts all of our dual staff together. It opens space for our pre-K classrooms in a centralized location. It allows for movement of our self-contained programs across the district. And it improves for both operational and resource efficiency by reducing the duplication of curriculum, books, and focuses resources at that language academy. And then it also allows us to support teacher recruitment for stronger teacher teams in our mono buildings, but also of our language academy or dual language program. So again, from those, what are some key benefits? It does allow us to balance class size by redistributing our enrollment. It allows us to have a more centralized pre-K program offered at North. It allows for the distribution of our enrollment, and it allows us to push some of our enrollment to those southern schools, which frees up space for us to be able to move some self-contained programs and pre-K into more centralized locations. And then it allows for us to support our staff with more targeted professional development and stronger support systems for our staff, addressing current challenges that can contribute to the loss of some of our dual language teachers or turnover to other districts. Again, this also comes with challenges. So what are the challenges? Coventry has enough space to serve all of our current dual language students that are enrolled in the program. To keep the enrollment within the building's capacity, enrollment for students each year at kindergarten would need to be limited to 5 classes or a total of 110 students. Transportation is provided to students who meet the state's requirement, which is living more than 1.5 miles away from the school without having to cross a hazardous walkway or intersection. And then the program is centrally located in town at Coventry and remains voluntary for English-speaking participants. So questions, feedback, and learning opportunities. We wanted people to understand where you can find information and how you can provide us your thoughts. More information can always be found on our website. There are interactive maps to see how your address is affected, frequently asked questions, and we'll be updating those as we get more and more feedback. You will also be able to see board meeting presentations from the past, as well as we go forward. We'll post those there, and we'll have newsletter updates. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see that there is a link to provide feedback, to ask a question. You can go on our Boundary website, and there's an opportunity to fill out a form to give us that as well. And then please be on the lookout for the survey in September to give us feedback. We appreciate your attention and your feedback, and we look forward to hearing from you.